بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على رسول الكريم والحمد لله رب العالمين حمد الشاكرين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. Dear brothers and sisters, wherever you might be, today we are talking about the financial world order, the one that is responsible for the miseries, poverties, people dying out of hunger in Yemen, in Niger, and amazingly that these places where people are really dying hungry, these happen to be one of the most or some of the most richest places in the world. If you look at Niger, it supplies Europe with more than 70% of its uranium supply. The uranium that's responsible for lighting and providing energy for more than 20% of EU's need of energy. The oil that comes from the Saudi Arabia, from Qatar, from Bahrain, from Emirates, and the gas that comes from Afghanistan, that comes from other places in the Muslim world, also is responsible for providing a very significant amount of energy in the world. Today, without any further explanation, no one denies and can argue with the fact that the current financial order is failing the people at large. And it's no surprise, and not out of the blue or of nowhere, that a couple of weeks ago, particularly on the 22nd and 23rd of August, the group of BRICS countries met in South Africa in order to remedy part of the implications of the current financial world order. BRICS is a composition of 5 states, and these are the initials of the 5 countries that have initiated and started this group, which is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. And the meeting this time took place in South Africa, where the whole BRICS issue started more than 10 or 12 years ago. And on their agenda, according to Peng Cheng, the president of China, who says we are witnessing significant historic changes in the world financial order. The Indian Prime Minister, he expressed the significant need for new forms and new ways of trade, new ways of product exchange in order to get over all types of hassles which the world are facing. A bit more conservative view, the Brazilian Prime Minister, or President actually, the Silva de Lula, he humbly stated, look, we are here in order to get things better or to prove the conditions of the people in the world when it comes to financial issues. However, we are not here to challenge the G7 or the G20 or even the United States hegemony in this issue. Now, to understand a bit more about the financial world order, we remember until 19 60 until 1971, actually, the world was dependent on gold as a backup for currencies, whether it's the dollar, the pound, the franc at the time before the euro was in place. Each and every one was backed by a significant amount of gold. And there was a price, a fixed price for gold. It was estimated in dollar. 1 ounce of gold was $35 plus minus. It fluctuates based on significant differences in the weighing scales. How do you scale the gold? But it was fixed. So the currencies in the world were absolutely controlled. Now, this was decided upon in Bretton Woods Agreement, which was signed in 1945 after the Second World War, and it was initiated together with the establishment of the United Nations, the National Security Council, the World Trade Organization, which used to be called at the time the Tariff Organization rather than the WTO. Now it's called the WTO. At that time, many of those economic bases were established. By 1971, United States of America unilaterally decided to quit the gold standard and to free the dollar from being backed by the gold. Why? Because United States figured out that it has printed and delivered more dollars than actually there is gold in the whole United States. And it used those dollars to improve the life of Europe and to support Europeans after the Second World War. In reality, it's not really to support, but to have a grip on the economic growth of Europe, which was called the Marshall Plan. So with all of the dollars that being sent to Europe, now Europe had enough dollars to buy all the gold reserves in the US, which was absolutely it's a complex matter that United States would not allow that. So Nixon comes up with this decision. Let's walk away from the gold. So no one can buy the gold of the United States with the dollars that America made. That's a puzzle. So he walked away from the Bretton Woods Agreement, annihilated that agreement. It has become null and void. Frustrated Europe, in particular France and Britain, of course. But France was more outspoken. Charles de Gaulle, the president of France then, he refused to back away from the gold, and he insisted that gold should remain the standard. And that was something that was a big challenge, of course. Look, France is not like Saudi Arabia or Egypt. It's not a puppet state. It's a state that runs in the orbit of the United States. It works with it, but it is not a country that will just follow orders. So Charles de Gaulle refused to walk away from the gold standard, just like US did. What happened then? How the United States put a pressure on France and other countries? Here came the issue. United States used its leverage over Saudi Arabia, invited King Faisal, talked with Nixon, and they agreed, United States and Saudi Arabia. And I don't really think it's an agreement. It's an imposition. It's by just do it. It's an order. Let's use OPEC, which was completely or mostly controlled by Saudi Arabia. It was the most powerful country with oil export, to trade oil only with dollars. So all of these OPEC countries, they will sell their oil, their petrol, only with the dollar. So this was the initiation of the petrodollar. Now, as a consequence of that, or even maybe a year earlier, there was a war in the Middle East, and with that war, Saudi Arabia and the other Arab states, they made an embargo on oil trade, so they will not sell oil to Europe or to other countries. And the price of oil went up so high, went from $1 a barrel to about $19 a barrel. So now United States is telling France and other European countries, see, if you will continue to buy the oil with a dollar, and you want to keep the exchange rate with the between gold and dollar and gold and money at the current price, which is $35, that's going to be a disaster. We will lose all our money. So let's get away from this gold standard. Let's raise the price of the gold, so it becomes, instead of $35, just multiply that by 20 maybe, so it becomes about $600-700 for an ounce. And that from that time, the walk away from the gold has become the norm. So no more gold standard. One more time, the United States came yet with another thing. In 1984, when Reagan was the president now, they walked away, United States walked away from all the bonds that control the rise of money above the economic growth. So there were such rules where banks, the industry and the economy, if it grows at a certain, let's say 10% rate, your money outcome, your actual currency, should not go above 10% by a lot. Maybe it will be 12-13% in order to control the inflation. And that no longer existed. After 1984, they called the deregulation. Reagan signed the deregulations of the banking system law, if you will. The Congress and the Senate, they passed this rule. And from after 1984, dollar or the currency has nothing to control it, absolutely, neither the gold nor the economic growth. So now we may have absolute downturn in economy, just like we have seen during the COVID-19 era between 2020 until 2023. The production economic growth was at its minimum, but the money growth, the Federal Reserve Bank in the United States issued during this period more dollars than it has ever produced over the last 50 years in terms of per year. That's a lot. Now, what do you do with this money? It's inflation. It inflated the markets. You have much more money than you have production. So now the prices of everything has increased, doubled, tripled in some places, in some cases, and the world is suffering. Now, out of all of this, people in general, they need a way out. So BRICS was, at least it was a claim that we want to walk away, we want to get something else. We need there was the Shanghai Singapore agreement, or the organization which was of countries organized in Singapore for some time. Then there was the Indian, Russian, Chinese alone by themselves. Now the BRICS. Now all of these groups, they are trying to find what can we do about all of this mess. We need something new. Oh, we need a new currency, a currency as an alternative to the dollar. Can you do that? Of course, you can, but can you survive without the dollar? Can you really stand up in the face of the Federal Reserve? Can you stand up in the face of the United States? Can you challenge the world order? These countries that met in South Africa, according to Jack Sullivan, the National Security Advisor to in the United States, he says the conflicts between these two countries are way above and beyond the ability of these countries to make a significant walk away from the current international financial world or international financial order. Conflicts like what? He talks about the border conflicts between India and China. He talks about Brazil very much looking up to replace China as an outsourcing place for United States industry. There is a big talk about, oh, what if we take all the semiconductor industry away from China and Taiwan and etc. Where do we take this? United States, very expensive. So all our computing resources are going to skyrocket. Oh, take it to Brazil. There was a time they talked about Poland, but now Brazil is looking very much forward to benefit from this. India, can India do that? India is the most suitable environment for the outsourcing of all the IT technology. Most of the IT companies, big IT companies in the United States, like Apple, Microsoft, Google, etc., Intel, AMD, they have factories that spend billions of dollars and get billions of dollars of revenue from the Indian market, which is similar to China in terms of other industry. India is not willing to risk its relations with the United States. And same China, by the way. China knows that if the United States takes China as an enemy and force it into either Cold War or even a bit more warmer cold because of Taiwan and any other reason, China will suffer a lot, will have to double or triple its spending on military, and it cannot afford that. Now China, one reason why it's flourishing, because it spends very little compared to the United States and other European countries on its military. So it doesn't want to do that. And therefore, here Jack Sullivan comes and says, look, these countries are not really serious. They cannot accomplish what they claim. Now, having said that, I want to inject something here, especially for those who follow the economic financial issues closely. This whole issue of BRICS and talking about alternative to the dollar, etc., was initiated in reality by one of the top Goldman Sachs consultants and owners or even founders. Those which is part of the Federal Reserve, which is eventually back to United States of America. That reminds me of an issue that US usually follows when it sees there is a big gap, there is a real problem, there is something seriously defected in the financial world order that's run by the United States. It means that at some point of time, someone is going to come and challenge that. Somebody will come up with a new ideology, with a new system, with a new ways, with a new methodology. It's not going to stay like that forever. So let some of these countries take the banner. As much as they are not serious, they will absorb the anger of the people, and the people of the world will be looking up to BRICS, and we have seen that more than 55 countries, they applied to join the BRICS, thinking that this is a new safe haven, this is the new type of walking away from the dominance of the dollar and the control of the world trade through the SWIFT exchange of money and transfer of money through one and only one place, which is totally controlled by the United States. The dollar is the dominant one, and the dollar is absolutely free. America can produce as much trillions of dollars as it wants without accountability. That everybody knows that. How to stop that? You need a genuine leadership in the world. Now, before that genuine leadership comes in, let's support and provide a safe haven for the growth of countries which can be as unserious, not non-serious, as the BRICS were in the last meeting. That's where the place when the president of Brazil says, we're not going to challenge the United States nor the dollar. No, what are you challenging then? How are you going to face this current oppressive financial world order? Russia is interested in its own interest. Why? Because it's under sanctions. It cannot exchange its wealth, its money. Many of its multi-billionaires, their money is frozen already in US and European banks. It cannot function financially as much as it wants to. So personally, it is interested in doing something. China is also interested in expanding the trade, losing the grip of the World Trade Organization in international trades. And we have seen during the Trump era, when America posted lots of tariffs and customs, increased the custom taxes on Chinese products. Again, they want an exit out of that. So each and every country has its own special interest. So if that special interest can be satisfied in a different manner, then forget about challenging the current international world order. Now, having said all of that, are we stuck? Is the world stuck in all of this? Is there no way out? No, not really. Not really. As I said at the beginning, the gold standard was the key factor which controlled the financial balance in the world, financial monetary balance in the world. Has to come back to the gold. Now, can a country like France, which could not challenge the United States back in 1970s on this issue, France and Europe is not capable of doing that because they are part of this whole system, and they are not willing to make an ideological challenge to the United States or to the current world order. This requires a very strong ideology. Brzezinski, back in 1997 and 1998, in his writings, in one of his books, which he talked about the difference between leadership and hegemony, and the United States no longer can lead, and therefore it will have to practice its hegemony in the world in order to keep the world order intact. He correctly identifies that the only way to challenge this world order led by an oppressive, now the oppressive is my word, it's not his word, but he called it a hegemon, United States hegemon. You need an ideology that can unite certain nations, one ideology that can define or unite a group of nations in order to provide a challenge. And according to him, there is no such ideology. Wrong, there is an ideology. He just did not want to mention it. We know that ideology. We know that Islam as an ideology, as a thoughtful process, as a whole process and a system based on a very well defined standard, which is the fact that this whole world is created by God, by Allah Azza wa Jal, and that He has revealed messengers, and the last of them is Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and He revealed to Muhammad, peace be upon him, a complete system that defines the gold as a standard. So you have to follow that, not because you like it or you dislike how America runs the world, but because it's an order from Allah Azza wa Jal. And then talks about the distribution of wealth, a mechanism for wealth distribution, which today capitalism, on top of capitalism, there is a big super state like United States, and then also the EU, and there is the Federal Reserve Bank, which has a very strong grip on the world economy. All of these are absolutely anti-distribution of wealth, absolutely. If not theoretical, if not with a theoretical foundation, practically, look how the wealth is being accumulated in the hands of less than 1% of the world, and maybe a few hundred people own more than 80% of the wealth of the world, with hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars and trillions of dollars stashed in companies, 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 companies, each one of them has $2 to $3 trillion. This is ridiculous. That's absolutely unacceptable. There is no wealth distribution in the world today. There is a wealth accumulation. There is an accumulation. There is a grip. There is a steal. There is, in fact, not only stealing, but it's like gangsters, like the gangs that go on the streets and take the money and the wealth from the people by force. Isn't this what France doing in Africa? Isn't this what the United States want to do by kicking out France and sitting there with their companies and sending troops to support. And they send the troops, they say, we want to protect Niger and Nigeria and Mali and Gabon and others from terrorist groups or militant groups. Are you kidding? Who are you kidding? You are there to protect your companies when they steal the gold and the uranium and the gas and the oil from these countries. In the interest of whom? In the interest of the big oil cartel. Chevron, Gulf, Standard Oil, Mobil, British Petroleum, BP, and these are the few companies that own most of the wealth that come out of the oil industry. So this is what is happening in the world. There is no wealth distribution. There is no standard for the currency. You can print currencies as much as you want, and you can buy not only products and wealth, you can buy people, you can buy countries. You can actually buy and purchase whole army to make a coup d'etat on your behalf. And that's what's happening in Africa today. So today, yes, the world needs a new ideology, an ideology that has a very strong control on currency, which is gold, an ideology that knows how wealth should be distributed in a very normal manner within the system itself, the system of Islam. Now I'm going back to the real solution that the world is missing today. A wealth distribution where it says right from the very beginning who owns what. And there is a well-defined division between ownership of a state as a state, ownership of individuals as individuals, and ownership of the community at large. So there is a balance. If I as an individual could not have an ownership of a bottle of water, there is a whole bunch of water resources in the area or in the state, in the Islamic State, if you will, which is where the water is completely owned by all the people. If I as an individual was not able to get and buy a bottle of water here, then I have access to the public water, which should come to my house at no cost. And talking about the food, if I'm unable, I don't have a piece of land that where I can grow some of my wheat, some of my bread, some of my animals, etc., then there is what's called the community or the society ownership, which I have a share in that. Now today, people have shares in companies, in capitalist companies. You buy the share today with, let's say, $100, tomorrow it will be trashed to $1. But in the Islamic State, you have a share in the real resources. You have a share in the oil, a share in the gas, a share in the uranium, a share in the minerals, a share in the water resources. That is wealth distribution. And then the state is not going to tap into your wealth to tax you money, because the state has its own ownership. It's not like a capitalist state. Capitalist state like in the United States, in Britain, in France, in many of the other countries, owns nothing, but it does have an ownership in the pockets of people. People sometimes they pay more taxes than eventually they spend on their health or on their food or on their daily need. The state in the United States, in Europe, in the capitalist countries, it's like a robber by force. It's a robber, it's a thief, it's a bandit that steals the wealth of the people. State within the Islamic State, there are boundaries. It has ownership, it has its own money, it has its own wealth. And the wealth that the state has, which should not be owned by the individuals, usually has more money than what you need to supply the needs of individuals who cannot afford the living. And it's not taxes. And then beyond that, there is the natural distribution for poor people and for the needies and the ones who cannot afford or do not have access to resources through zakat, through the inheritance programs in Islam, and many others. So today, yes, there is an ideology. Yes, there is a system, and it's proven system. What is missing then? What's missing is the implementation of that. Now, the implementation of this type of system can only be through a state. And that state has to be homogeneous to the same system, which means it should be part of the system. The system comes from Islam, the state comes from Islam. That means you need a state that represents Islam, an Islamic state, a khilafah. No. There is a big war, international war, waged or has been waged since the beginning of last century, since Britain was able to install Mustafa Kemal Ataturk in Turkey to fight against the existence of Khilafah and then to fight against the return of Khilafah. And this is a fact. This is not the time to prove it, but it's a fact. Go and check the facts and see how many regimes were established in the Muslim world. Each and every one of them is anti the return of an Islamic way of life or Islamic state. Each and every one of them. You can count them all the way from Indonesia, all the way to Morocco, all the way from Egypt to Turkey, and in between. Each and every one of them. The most people who have ever been imprisoned or evicted out of their homes or harassed are the ones who call for the return of an Islamic state of Khilafah. Why? Because this is the only possible potential challenge to the current oppressive world order, which is based on capitalism and the myth of democracy. The only. It's not BRICS, it's not Russia, it's not China, it's not Britain, it's not France, it's not EU, it's not any one of these, because none of them is capable or even interested in or willing to carry a challenge to the current world order, starting from the returning to the gold standard correctly and completely, coming back to a wealth distribution system, unlike communism and socialism, who said everything should be owned by the big community, the society, under the leadership or the control of the Communist Party. We have seen how that worked in the Soviet Union. It worked against the interests of the people, then it was destroyed and it was thrown out in the garbage of history. Capitalism, it makes individual ownership as a god. No one can challenge that. This is the god of the current world order. Individual, rich individual, super rich individual, until you come to the only rich individual in the world. So this will not work. Without any other ideology, no way you can do it. Islam is the only one that can do it. Only if the Muslim people, Muslim Ummah, Muslim leaders, Muslim scholars, Muslim students, Muslim thinkers, they come together and they put that system in place and replace all those within the Muslim Ummah, within the Muslim countries, replace all these regimes that have imposed themselves with the help of Britain, France, and the United States. Replace all of them, bring Islamic State, take in your control the wealth of the Ummah, put the standards and the laws and the regulations that are related to the financial order, and then the world will rid of the dominance of the dollar, the dominance of the Federal Reserve Bank, which stands behind that. And mind you, I will speak later in another lecture about what the Fed is planning for the future, which is to actually acquire not only the wealth of countries, but the money, the financial resources of all countries in the world. And that's going to be the most disastrous things that you ever can imagine. We'll reserve that to another lecture. But as of today, look, what had happened in South Africa a couple of weeks ago is nothing but a smooth letting United States and the current world financial world order to slip by and to go unpunished or unchallenged, just to claim that we have an organization that is ready to do that, when in reality they do not have the guts or the system or the momentum or the will to do what they claim they want to do. What's the final solution? You have to push yourself as much as possible. Spend the best of your energy and strength and momentum to bring back the Islamic system of Khilafah with all its components, the economic system at the top, the political system as the driving vehicle, and the social system to get the coherence among the people of all sorts and walks of life. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
لا لن يطول الظلام ديننا لن يضام نحن جيل همام نحن فينا عمر لا 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 لن يطول الظلام ديننا لن يضام نحن جيل همام نحن فينا عمر صبح بدا نور ظهر نجم وشمس وقمر ألقى على الدنيا الدرر هذا عمر هذا عمر كل البرايا تنتظر أيامه البيض الغرر كي تستفيد من العبر هذا عمر هذا عمر لا لن تدوم الجراح بل سيأتي الصباح نحن أهل الكفاح نحن فينا عمر لا لا لن تدوم الجراح بل سيأتي الصباح نحن أهل الكفاح نحن فينا عمر